The phone rang, its sharp, insistent sound cutting through the quiet evening. I knew who it was before I even looked at the screen. Mom. My heart pounded. Christmas was just around the corner, and I knew what was coming. But nothing could prepare me for what I was about to hear. "Don't come for Christmas," my mom's voice was cold, almost detached. "We don't want you here this year." The words landed like a punch to the gut. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words stuck. I couldn't find the strength to respond. I had spent so many years trying to prove myself, to show them that I was worthy of love, but it seemed like no matter what I did, it was never enough. "Mom, what are you talking about?" I finally managed, my voice trembling, but determined. "You're just not who we thought you'd be," she said, the words like daggers. "We've had enough. It's best you stay away." And then, as if her words weren't enough, I heard my sister's voice in the background, cold and unforgiving. "We'll pretend we don't know you, too," she added with a casual cruelty, as if it were just another ordinary thing to say. I stood there in silence, the weight of their rejection crashing down on me like a tidal wave. I wanted to scream. To fight back. To ask them how they could do this to me, after everything I had been through. But I didn't. Instead, I just nodded, feeling the tears sting the back of my eyes, but refusing to let them fall. I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't going to let them see me broken. I wasn't going to beg for their approval any longer. This was my turning point. So, I hung up the phone. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just walked away from the call with one thought in my mind: they had no idea who they were dealing with. Days passed after that phone call, but the words still echoed in my mind. "Don't come for Christmas. We'll pretend we don't know you." I replayed those words over and over again, the bitterness curling in my chest. The emotional scars they had left on me were deep, but they didn't know something, they had just lit a fire within me. A fire that had been smoldering for years, waiting for the right moment to erupt. I tried to stay busy, keeping my focus on work, but nothing felt the same. I had been through worse before, I thought to myself. There had been moments in my life when I had felt this alone, this betrayed. But this time, I promised myself it would be different. This time, I would take control. As the days leading up to Christmas passed, I couldn't ignore the cruel irony of it all. My parents, people who had once meant the world to me, were cutting me out of their lives. I couldn't help but wonder what had changed. Had I failed them somehow? Or had they simply grown tired of me? The questions gnawed at me, but I couldn't get an answer. And then, there was my sister. I couldn't shake the memory of her words, her dismissal. For years, I had tried to be the good daughter, the one who always did what was expected of her. But it was never enough. She had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. My parents' eyes had always been on her, and they had rewarded her with love, with opportunities, and with everything they could give. Meanwhile, I was left to fight for scraps. It was clear to me now. It had always been about her. She was the one who could do no wrong, the one who was allowed to be celebrated, to shine. And I was just the shadow, an afterthought. Their rejection, her cruelty, it was all a result of their favoritism. But deep inside, I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. No, I was done feeling small. I was done letting them make me feel like I didn't matter. I would show them. I would prove to them that I didn't need their approval. That I didn't need them to validate my worth. I knew my time would come. I just had to be patient. But as I mulled over everything, the one thing I couldn't shake was this: they didn't even realize that they were about to make the biggest mistake of their lives. What they had just done wasn't just a cut, it was a mistake that would come back to haunt them in ways they couldn't even imagine. I smiled to myself. This Christmas would be a turning point, but not the way they thought. It was going to be my time to rise, to finally take control of the life that had always been slipping through my fingers. And soon, they would learn the hard way that you can't throw away family and expect no consequences. The pain of rejection wasn't something new to me. It wasn't the first time my parents had let me down, but this time, it felt different. This time, the hurt was deeper. Christmas, a time meant for family and togetherness, had become a reminder of everything I wasn't, of everything I would never be in their eyes. I sat in my apartment, staring at the empty Christmas tree in the corner. It felt absurd. How could a holiday that was supposed to bring joy only bring sadness? But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I wasn't just rejected for this Christmas. I had been rejected long before that. My parents had chosen my sister over me, again and again. The love they had for her was unconditional, but for me, it was always conditional. I had always felt like the spare child, the one who didn't measure up. My thoughts wandered back to our childhood. It wasn't always like this, was it? There had been moments, good moments, when I felt loved. I remembered the days when my dad would take me fishing, and my mom would bake cookies with me on a lazy Sunday afternoon. Those memories were the foundation of what I had once believed was a loving family. But somewhere along the way, it all changed. When my sister had gotten her perfect grades and had everything handed to her without question, I was expected to struggle and earn my way. When she got the attention for her achievements, I was left in the shadows. And then came the inevitable comparison: why can't you be more like your sister? Those words haunted me, cutting deeper than any physical wound ever could. They shattered the fragile confidence I had left. I had worked so hard my entire life to make them proud, only to find out that I was never good enough. My sister's success had come naturally, but my success was met with criticism and expectations that were impossible to meet. I wasn't allowed to be me. I had to be someone I was never meant to be, a version of myself that they could finally approve of. It wasn't just the rejection that hurt. It was the realization that I had been living in a fantasy for so long, thinking that things could change. That one day they would see me for who I truly was, someone capable of achieving great things, despite their doubts. But now, it was clear. They weren't going to change. They had made their choice, and I wasn't in it. Sitting alone, I let the tears fall. I wasn't angry, I was devastated. I had always tried to be the good daughter, but it felt like my efforts were never enough. They would never see me the way I needed them to. And that realization tore through me. But then, something shifted. The tears stopped. A new sense of clarity washed over me. I wasn't going to beg for their approval anymore. I wasn't going to live my life waiting for them to love me the way I deserved. No, I was going to prove them wrong. I wasn't going to sit here in my apartment, wallowing in self-pity. It was time for a change. It was time for me to take control of my own destiny. The pain of their rejection became my fuel. If they didn't want me at their Christmas dinner, fine. I would find my own way to make Christmas unforgettable. But more importantly, I would find a way to make them regret ever pushing me aside. As the days passed, the sting of my parents' words still echoed in my mind. But instead of wallowing in despair, I began to plan. I wasn't going to let them get away with treating me like this. I had spent too many years living in their shadow, and now, I was ready to step into the light, on my own terms. I sat at my desk, the cold winter wind blowing against the window, my mind racing with thoughts of revenge. The hurt was still there, but I was no longer angry. I was calculated, focused, and ready to turn the tables. This wasn't going to be about petty revenge. No, it would be a strategy, a way to show them that I was worthy of their respect, without their validation. The first step was to find a way to make them regret their actions. I knew my parents had always admired success. They loved my sister's flawless life, the perfect husband, the career, the house. It was clear to me now, if I could achieve something big, something that would blow them away, they would have no choice but to notice me. But it had to be something more than just personal success, it had to be a statement. I thought about my sister for a moment. She was the golden child, the one who had everything handed to her. She always seemed to have the perfect life, the perfect family. But I knew her weaknesses. No one's life was perfect, no matter how it looked on the surface. My sister might have had everything in terms of material wealth, but she lacked the one thing I had, a drive to prove my worth, to fight back when the world seemed to reject me. I pulled up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. There was someone who could help me, a business associate I had met a few years ago, someone who could offer me the platform I needed to take my career to the next level. He was wealthy, successful, and had connections that could open doors to new opportunities. But he wasn't just any businessman, he was someone who had a knack for spotting untapped potential, and I knew that I could leverage that. I sent a text to him, asking if we could meet. Within hours, I received a response. He agreed to meet me for coffee the next day. It was my chance to finally take control, to make a name for myself, without depending on my parents, my sister, or anyone else. This was going to be about me, and only me. The plan was simple: I would start my own business, something my parents could never ignore. They had always believed that success only came through traditional routes, through the safe, well-trodden path of college degrees, high-paying jobs, and following the rules. But I knew there was another way. In today's world, entrepreneurship and innovation were the real keys to success. It was time to show them that I could do it on my own terms. I sat back in my chair, feeling a rush of excitement and determination. This wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about reclaiming my life, my future. I wasn't going to be the quiet, forgotten daughter anymore. I was going to make them realize exactly who they had pushed aside. The next few days were a blur of meetings, late nights, and brainstorming sessions. I had a plan, and I was sticking to it. This was going to be my chance to show my parents, my sister, and everyone else that I was more than capable. It was time to turn their rejection into my greatest asset. The countdown had begun. Soon, they would all realize that they had underestimated me. And when that moment came, they would have no one but themselves to blame. The meeting with my business associate went better than expected. He didn't just see potential in my ideas, he saw a future in them. Within weeks, I had everything I needed to start my business. It was small at first, just a few employees, but it was enough to make a real impact. I poured my heart into every aspect of it: marketing, sales, customer relations. I wanted to make it undeniable. And soon, it was thriving. I knew my parents would hear about it. They had to. I wasn't going to tell them directly, that would give them too much satisfaction. Instead, I wanted them to realize how much they had underestimated me, not through words, but through results. It was around the time of the next family gathering that I saw the opportunity. My parents had invited my sister and her family, as they always did for these events. The moment I walked into the room, their smiles faded just a bit. I had changed. My hair was more polished, my clothes more refined. There was an air of confidence around me that wasn't there before. But the real shock came when I casually dropped the news. "Oh, by the way," I said, as my parents sat at the dining table, the rest of the family gathered around. "My business just hit a milestone. We closed our first major deal with a big company. It's been incredible." For a moment, the room was silent. My mother's eyes widened, and my father cleared his throat, visibly trying to mask his discomfort. But it was my sister who looked the most surprised. She had always been the one with everything in her life figured out, always boasting about her perfect family, her perfect career. And now, here I was, outdoing her in the one thing they all valued the most: success. I let the silence hang for a few seconds, knowing the weight of my words was sinking in. Then, I took a seat and sipped my drink as if nothing had happened. My sister tried to mask her discomfort with forced laughter, but it didn't fool anyone. I had just done what they had never expected. I had achieved what they all thought was impossible for me. But this was just the beginning. I wasn't going to stop there. The real revenge would come when they realized the depth of their mistake. I didn't share too many details with them. I didn't need to. They had no idea what I was capable of, and it was better that way. Over the next few weeks, my business continued to grow, and my social media presence exploded. I started getting calls from major influencers, companies, and even the press. It was everything I had dreamed of, and more. One evening, I received a call from a prestigious business award organization. They wanted me to attend an event in New York City to accept an award for my success. It was exactly the type of recognition that my parents, especially my father, had always valued. The kind they could never ignore. I called my mom and invited her to the event. "Mom, I just wanted to let you know that I'll be in New York next month for an awards ceremony. It's for my business. I think it's a pretty big deal. You and Dad should come. It's going to be a celebration of everything I've worked for." I could hear the hesitation in her voice when she responded. "We'll think about it," she said, but I could tell she was rattled. She hadn't expected me to reach this level. And for the first time in years, I could feel her beginning to regret how she had treated me. The day of the awards ceremony arrived, and I was a bundle of emotions. This wasn't just an ordinary event for me. It wasn't just about the award. It was about proving to myself that I could succeed despite the years of doubt, neglect, and cruelty from the people I once trusted most, my family. As I walked into the grand ballroom in New York, my heels clicking against the polished floor, I felt a sense of pride that was hard to put into words. The lights, the elegance, the prestigious faces around me, it all seemed surreal. But what made it even more surreal was knowing that the people who had doubted me were going to be there, too. I had invited my parents, and I wasn't about to let them miss this moment. They had the option to decline, but I knew they wouldn't pass up the chance to attend a high-profile event like this. As I walked through the crowd, I noticed my parents in the corner of the room. My mother looked uncomfortable in her seat, dressed in an expensive but outdated gown. My father, who had always prided himself on his authority and success, was trying to blend in with the elite, but I could tell his discomfort was evident. His eyes darted around, clearly looking for any sign of recognition. Then, they saw me. I was wearing a black velvet gown, my hair styled perfectly, and my confidence radiated like never before. As I made my way toward the stage, I noticed the shift in their expressions. It was a mixture of shock and disbelief. My mother's lips were pursed in what I could only interpret as a faint smile. But my father, his face was almost unreadable. For the first time in years, I saw something resembling guilt flash across his features. I stepped onto the stage, and the audience clapped as I accepted my award. The recognition from my peers, from people who truly saw my worth, felt like validation for everything I had gone through. But the real moment came when I looked down at my parents, sitting at the back of the room, trying their best to blend in with the crowd. I raised the award high in the air and made a brief but deliberate eye contact with them. My heart pounded, not because I wanted to show off, but because I wanted them to feel everything that I had felt during those years of silence and neglect. The weight of their indifference. The sting of their rejection. And now, standing in front of them, I was no longer that vulnerable girl. I had transformed into a woman who had made it on her own, without them. After the ceremony, I received a flood of congratulations from my colleagues, business partners, and even strangers who admired my story. But the most satisfying part was when my mother approached me hesitantly, a forced smile on her face. She was trying so hard to seem proud, but I could see the cracks in her facade. "That was impressive," she said, her voice faltering slightly. "I didn't know you were capable of all this." I looked at her for a moment, holding back the urge to lash out. "It's more than just what you see here, Mom. It's about what I built from nothing. It's about the years of hard work that no one saw. I'm here not because of anyone else, but because I believed in myself when no one else did." I could see the pain in her eyes. It was clear now. They regretted their past actions. They knew they had pushed me away, and in doing so, they had underestimated me. Later that evening, my father came up to me, his pride now replaced by a look of quiet remorse. "You've done well," he said, his voice soft, almost apologetic. "We didn't see it then, but we see it now. You've made something of yourself, and we're sorry we didn't support you." His words were as hollow as they were late, but they were enough. It was more than I had ever expected from them. The satisfaction wasn't in the apology, it was in the realization that I had won, not just the award, not just the success, but the peace of knowing that I had overcome everything they thought would break me. As I left the event that night, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't experienced before. I wasn't bound by their expectations, their judgments, or their mistakes. I had created my own future, and no one could take that away from me. The days following the awards ceremony were filled with a whirlwind of emotions. I had achieved so much, but there was still something lingering deep inside me, a need to make my parents and my sister understand the full extent of their wrongdoings. Their sudden interest in my success felt forced, like an attempt to reclaim something they had long taken for granted. I couldn't help but think about the years of emotional neglect, the years of their selfishness. They had only come to recognize my value after I had proven myself, after I had shown them I could succeed without their help. But the moment of revenge, the one I had been planning for so long, had yet to come. One afternoon, I received a call from my mother. I wasn't sure what to expect, but the tone in her voice immediately struck me. She was apologetic, but I could hear the desperation behind her words. "Honey, we need to talk," she said. "Your father and I. We've been thinking about how we treated you. We see now that we were wrong, and we'd like to make amends. We want to be a part of your life again." I could feel my chest tighten with a mixture of emotions. On one hand, part of me wanted to ignore her, to shut the door on them once and for all. On the other hand, I knew that they had come to me because they needed something. Their pride had been shattered, and now they wanted to share in my success. They wanted the benefits that came with it. "Mom," I replied, my voice steady but firm, "I hear what you're saying, but the damage is done. You pushed me away for years. And now that I've built something on my own, you want to be a part of it? It doesn't work that way." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear her heart sinking, and I relished the moment. This wasn't just about the apology, it was about showing them that I didn't need them to be successful. I had become someone without them, and now they were the ones who had to humble themselves to ask for my forgiveness. But there was more I had in store for them. The real moment of karma came when I received an invitation to a high-profile charity event, a gala that was known for attracting the most influential people in the city. It was the kind of event that my parents, especially my father, would have killed to attend, but had never been invited to. I knew this would be the perfect opportunity to make them feel the weight of their actions. I made my decision. I would go, but this time, I wasn't going alone. I was going to bring a special guest, someone who would truly make them squirm. The night of the gala arrived, and as I entered the grand ballroom, I spotted my parents in the corner, standing together with a few of their influential friends. Their smiles seemed forced, and their conversation lacked the usual arrogance they often displayed when surrounded by people they considered important. I walked past them, making sure they saw me, and took my seat at the head table, right at the center of the room. The reaction was instant. I could feel their eyes on me, watching as I mingled with some of the city's most respected figures. But the real moment of payback came when I spotted my sister, holding court with a group of people near the bar. She was laughing, enjoying herself, but when she turned around and saw who I had brought with me, my former boss, a billionaire who had taken an interest in my work, her face went pale. In that moment, I could tell she regretted everything. She regretted how she had treated me, how she had tried to keep me in the shadows for so long. And as for my parents, I saw their expressions shift from smugness to unease. They had underestimated me, thinking I would always need them, always be the one left behind. But in that moment, I was the one with the power. I had come full circle. I could see the realization dawn on them. This wasn't just about me proving them wrong. It was about showing them that their mistreatment of me had consequences. They could never be a part of my success now, not unless they truly understood the value of respect and unconditional support. The night ended with my parents quietly slipping away, their heads low. My sister avoided eye contact, her pride shattered. I felt a sense of satisfaction wash over me. It wasn't about gloating, it wasn't about revenge in the typical sense. It was about restoring my own dignity, about reclaiming what was mine. The tables had turned, and I had finally achieved the freedom and respect I had always deserved. The gala was the beginning of something new. The power dynamics had shifted, and I stood on top, no longer the person I once was, the vulnerable, ignored daughter who craved her parents' approval. I had turned my pain into strength, and now, I was finally free. But the journey didn't end with a simple event or a moment of revenge. It was a culmination of years of hard work, perseverance, and unspoken grit. A week after the gala, I received another call from my mom. This time, there was no arrogance or pride in her voice, only remorse. "Honey," she began, her voice trembling, "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I realize now that we were wrong. All these years, we took you for granted. You didn't deserve that, and I understand if you don't want to hear from us. But I'm begging you, can we start over?" I didn't answer right away. My mind raced through memories of everything I'd been through, of the times they had belittled me and ignored my needs for years. I had already proven that I could live without them, but hearing my mother's words did something unexpected to me. It softened the edges of my heart just a little. I wasn't the same person I had been before. I had found my own path, and it was one that didn't require their validation. "Mom, I appreciate your apology," I said, my voice calm but firm. "But I want you to understand, I'm not the person you knew. I have my life now, and I've built something of value. I don't need to be part of a family where I'm only valued when it suits you. I've learned to be enough on my own." There was silence on the other end of the line. I could hear my mother's quiet sobs, and for a moment, I almost felt a pang of guilt. But then I remembered everything I had worked for. I had fought to stand on my own 2 feet. I had spent years building my career, my reputation, and my life. And now, I was finally reaping the rewards of my hard work. I didn't need their approval to continue moving forward. "You should be proud of what I've done," I continued. "And I hope you can take this lesson to heart. It's about respect, about recognizing that families should support each other, not tear each other down." The conversation ended on a somber note, but I didn't feel the anger I once had. It was as if I had released myself from their grip. The weight that had burdened me for years had finally been lifted, and I was free to pursue my own happiness. I didn't need them to validate my worth anymore. A few days later, I stood at the window of my luxury penthouse, looking out over the city that had witnessed my rise. I had made it, on my own terms. The view from up here was everything I had dreamed of: success, freedom, and the peace that came with knowing I had taken control of my life. As I sipped my champagne, I thought back to that first conversation with my mom, and I couldn't help but smile. They had underestimated me. They had believed I would always need them, that I would always be the one left behind. But now, I was the one they sought to impress. I had become the woman I always knew I could be, and it was a beautiful thing to witness. In the end, they had learned a valuable lesson: never take for granted the people you love. You never know when they will walk away and prove that they don't need you to succeed. The champagne glass clinked against the table as I raised it to my success. I had won. They had lost. But the real victory was in knowing that I had finally taken control of my destiny, and no one could ever take that away from me.